everybody. Good afternoon, wherever you are in the world tuning in. My name is Akila Mendez-Valdez, and I am so excited today to welcome Dr. Brandi Scott, who is a consultant and coach and one of our fabulous NAWBO San Antonio members. Welcome, Brandi.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
100%. We can't wait to jump in and learn more about you. So, consultant and coach, I absolutely love the work that you do, but tell people more about what exactly it is and how you help people.
Yeah. Thanks for the opportunity to share. And I love these. I love the NAWBO live events. It's like I sit and I have my coffee and I listen and get to know the folks. So glad to be here this morning. So yeah, as a consultant and coach, I think, what's important to think about is kind of what led here. And so I started my career as an administrator. I was an administrator for about 15 years in higher education. And so I was first gen. I was the first gen person in my family to graduate high school and go on to college. And there was this theory that I learned later on about the hidden curriculum. When you're first gen going to college, there's all these rules and expectations that folks have and that you don't know when you're first gen. And what was interesting is when I became a professional and I had folks who I supervised or mentored, the way hidden curriculum was coming up of the unknowns, the expectations that folks didn't know they were navigating professionally in the workplace. And so today, as a consultant and coach, it's recognizing that there feels like there's rules, there's expectations, and how do I navigate those? And as a coach, really helping folks with building the skills and the confidence to know that it isn't that you aren't the right fit, that you shouldn't be there. It's helping you have access to the information for how to empower yourself in those spaces, to advocate for yourself, to get what you need. And so as a consultant, when I'm working one-on-one with folks, that's the lens and how I'm leading them with building the skills and the confidence. And then also when I'm consulting with organizations on team development, strategic planning, how are we thinking about the people and the results?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Walk me through, first to go to college in the family, you said first to graduate high school as well. Is that what you said?
Yep.
Okay. Walk me through how that shapes kind of your worldview to be, that person in your family who's gone out to do those things. Is that still something that's in your back of your mind all the time? Have you gone to therapy to resolve that? Walk me through, what that's done for you in your life.
Yeah, it is a piece of me that informs so much of what I do, right? So one, in my career in higher education, my whole career was in positions and at institutions where it was really creating access for folks who had barriers for lots of different reasons, whether it be income or your family didn't have access to formal education, all the various barriers that impact someone. That was my career there. And then even today here in my current role as a consultant and coach, because I feel like there's so much internal, right? A word that we hear about a lot, in particular when I'm working with a lot of my women clients, is we talk about imposter syndrome and that feeling of I don't belong here, I shouldn't be here. When really it's about, okay, I have this feeling, it's with me, and I'm still going to do this anyway. And so do the feelings of being first gen still happen, or imposter syndrome? They happen all the time. And still it's learning how to know I've had this feeling before. I know this. I've got some past, I got some history, had some therapy around it, and feeling, continuing even with that feeling.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's important the way you mentioned, like, it's not something you have to shove down and never think about. Like, it can still be very much incorporated into your, persona and your worldview and all of that. And it sounds like you've been able to do that in a really healthy way. So when you talk about, higher education being a world that you've been in a lot, that automatically also makes me think about how much higher education is just in turmoil in the current state of affairs. So what do you feel like right now are some of the biggest challenges that you see facing higher education, and how your role can kind of help guide institutions through that?
Yeah, so much shifting and changing. And, as someone who, right, my master's and my Ph.D. are all focused in higher education. And a lot of what I learned about what my curriculum was about is being challenged and shifted as, we can't do this, or this isn't, the way to support students. And I have moral clarity in that I believe anyone who wants to access higher education should have the opportunity to access it. And what are the ways that we try and limit the barriers to get there? And I think that's the continuing role, right? If you work in higher education, if you're a leader in these spaces, is what are the ways that I'm continuing to feel committed to recognizing that there are challenges and barriers that shouldn't exist and do, and what can I do to lessen those for students and families who are wanting to access higher ed? And, and also, from the administrator side and leading people who are, more directly working, particularly with college students, is what are the ways that you're also supporting and being honest, having honest conversations about how all the shifts and changes are impacting the people who then have to deliver the information or have to shift the way they're supporting the students in the way that they, like me, were trained to do, and it's changing. And so it's being honest about, just the emotional impact that folks have, that people have. We are humans no matter what we do. And so I think I'd center that.
Yeah. I think a lot of times when we talk about slowing down to do some of these things in your organization, be it a massive, institution or even a small, business, I think a lot of times it's, well, gosh, we can't slow down to do that. We've got so many other quick, fires we've got to put out, urgent things. We've got to do revenue generating things. We've got to be focused on the bottom line. What do you say to people who don't value that piece of it, if I can use that strong of a term, but if they feel like this is just not something we have the bandwidth to even do right now, what do you say to them to help them understand why it might be a little more urgent than they think?
Yeah, this has come up a lot in the last couple of months as I'm working with different teams. So what you'll also see right now in higher education and across a lot of industries is there's high turnover. And that turnover is because folks are put into a role like higher education where there's a lot of shifting. And so I was put into something, but then the expectations change, the rules change, and I don't know what I'm doing. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling burnout, and then I leave. And then you have a whole search process again that takes months and takes the people time to interview people. And so your intention of not investing time in supporting your staff and your team is because you think that it'll take too much time, but not doing it actually takes more time. It takes more time you're losing people, you're burning people out, and you're preventing you from even getting to that goal. And so it's pausing yourself as a leader and your team long enough to see why this actually in the long term saves us time and money.
Yeah, that's such a great answer, because I think it doesn't try to convince people of why they should be more warm and fuzzy, but it convinces them of, no, it actually is impacting your bottom line. It actually does have some hard numbers behind it and all of that. Fantastic. What would you say is your absolute favorite thing to do with companies? What do you love to get in there and help out with?
I love so many pieces. So I'll say one of the things that I've been able to do this summer quite a bit is strategic retreat planning with teams. And so going in for, right, it's typically that day where it's like we're purposefully slowing down, pausing, and thinking deeply. And I love being able to go in there and facilitate retreats with teams and say, okay, so why are you here? What is it that brought you to this organization? Let's start there. What are your goals as an organization? What's preventing you from actually prioritizing those? And let's make a plan to help you get there. And then, what can happen and also has to be built into this retreat day is you have a very inspiring and exciting day. Everybody's fired up, and then you go back to work and the minutia and the million things happen. So it's also the continuation plan of, okay, we had this great day, and what are the ways that we're checking in progress to make sure we're actually meeting the goals of that very, exciting day. But then as we get into the work, how it continues.
Yes. I love that you will come alongside them for more of like a true accountability and or like long-term relationship, because we've all done those like team building days and workshops, and we go and we do, an activity together, and then we never talk about what we just did, again. So I love that you will continue to be like, hey guys, like we said we were going to do XYZ. What's going on? How are we doing?
Yeah.
Because I think there's so many different directions we're all getting pulled in that it's vital to have somebody in that role who enjoys being the follow-up person.
Yep.
Awesome. So in your role with NAWBO, you are a new member of our board. You have just joined us. We roll over, if you guys are not familiar with NAWBO, National Association of Women Business Owners, our San Antonio chapter rolls over our board in June. And so you've been with us for just a couple months now. Help me understand your role as the DEIB chair. Is that something that you've filled in other organizations? Is that something that, obviously it closely relates to a lot of the work that you do already, but what was it that made you want to step into that role in particular?
Yeah. So it's been great to join NAWBO for a lot of reasons, in particular to be on this board and in this role. So my career in higher ed was all focused on equity and inclusion initiatives. I talked about access to higher education. That was my first job and career. And then I oversaw offices and spaces, led trainings for staff, faculty, and students on ways that we are more thoughtful and intentional about how each of our experiences and backgrounds influences the way we see and understand ourselves and the world around us. And so when I first got on to NAWBO, I reached out to Nisi and said, I see that you're the chair and I'd love to get involved and join your committee because this is an area that's passionate of mine. And then was then later asked if I would step into the role, and had a great conversation to help prepare me for that, to understand what this would look like here. And so I think for me, it's being able to take the skills and the knowledge that I have, particularly my background in higher ed and the work I've done with teams in this area, but then also apply that in a business realm, right? NAWBO started because of ways that women didn't have access in the 70s to create businesses, right? And so an organization was formed so that women had access and opportunity to be able to create, run their own businesses. So really rooted in DEIB of how are we creating access for folks who didn't choose, where there were laws and ways that women were prevented from doing this. So it's grounded in that work. And how does that root still continue to today? Which women feel supported and valued in businesses? And, how are we thinking about the breadth of women in the ways that we are, not only advocating for ourselves, but as NAWBO advocating for all women business owners, and, who feels like they have access to this great group and these great resources that we have. So excited to be in it, just starting out in the role, and it's been great.
Very cool. So if people are curious, I think sometimes, we hear of board chair positions, even in the marketing role, people are like, okay, but like, what do you actually do? Are you the one doing every single, social media post? Are you the one that we should talk to about, it just runs the gamut, when you tell somebody I'm in this board role, what people imagine. So if people are curious, what that entails for NAWBO specifically, what are some of the things that you're tackling? What are some of your goals this year? And what does that, actual role and responsibility look like for you?
Yeah. And at the very beginning of our conversation, I was talking about the hidden curriculum and how that applies when you're a first-gen student. I think about it too here of like you assume that there's all these rules and expectations, and once you're in it, and even for me, who I served on a board in Colorado, but it's been a few years, and I was new to NAWBO and new to the business world, having come from a different kind of career. So there was all kinds of assumptions of, what is this? Can I do this? How do I do this? But like anything, it's really about leaning on the team that you're working with, right? So I've had great conversations with other board members about ways to partner, uplift the work that they're leading and that they're doing. And so for me, it's around, what are we doing to create events and spaces where the diversity of our women business owners are uplifted and supported, and rooting that in what we're already awesome at, right? Like our power up sessions and our, monthly meetings. What are the ways that we are thinking about, the core from the national level of the ways that, we're wanting to be, the most diverse women business organization in the country. Yeah. And how are we doing that within San Antonio?
Yeah. Look at you with the accent on San Antonio. That was like great. You just like slipped that right in there. I love it. No, I think that's a great way to summarize it. And, going back to kind of, where we fit in on the marketing side, it's been great to have that DEIB role, with Nisi and then now with you in that position. If we have a question on something in terms of communications, or should we, post about this, talk about this, it's so wonderful to be able to have that like neutral third party of a DEIB role to just have that temperature check to say, are we on the right path here? Like, do we need to have that, kind of conversation about it? And, again, it gets very easy to just be in the weeds and, knocking stuff out and, sharing without too much thought. But to me, the DEIB lens gives us such a great moment to just pause and think about everyone who's going to be affected by this.
Yep.
And can we do our part to make sure that it's inclusive, everyone feels like they belong, and that has such a wide application that you really do need somebody in that role to help think about every single, angle.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that you're always willing to jump in and help out on those things too.
Definitely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think like the piece there of what is most powerful is how you talked about that pause moment. And it's both the pause of, what am I not seeing about, someone else's experience, but also what am I not seeing about my own, right? How am I turning the mirror first and saying, this is affecting me because of this experience I have, this identity that I have, this of what makes me, so that I can then say, well, I understand how they can see it different because I know the way that I see it and how I got there. And so it's just a way of trying to practice seeing someone else in the same way that you see yourself, of you have reasons for the way you think that you do, the way that you act that you do. We all have them, and giving other people the grace and the recognition of maybe why they do.
Yeah, the grace and the recognition. I like that. Not just like, hey, we're gonna, bend over backwards, but I recognize why you feel like that. I recognize, where you're coming from, and I get it. I think that's a wonderful way to put it. So, for you in your role as a business owner, what ways have you, tapped into NAWBO? What ways have you been able to, what resources have you accessed? Walk us through kind of what you do to stay involved in NAWBO beyond just, your board responsibilities.
Yeah. So, when I moved into, business ownership and into a full-time consultant and coach, I have some education and some degrees and career experience behind me, but I'd never run a business before. And I was really looking for, what are ways that I can learn, starting out a business, middle, and then what's great about NAWBO is it's folks who are across the board in business ownership, right? Folks who are, starting out, to folks who've been doing it for a while, to folks who are in million up or who've been running a business for a long time. And so it's both informative for where I'm at, but also is like inspiring to see like, wow, look at what she's done and created and built, and the way she thinks is whoa. So it's the interactions, it's truly the conversations, like at the monthly meetings, at the various events that we have, of just listening and hearing the stories of these awesome women who, have all kinds of different businesses, things that I've have no understanding about or have ever lived, right? But I'm like, I just love hearing it. And I take pieces every time of like, wow, I'm thinking about a networking event where someone mentioned a book to me that was basically a financial book. And this isn't typically my realm, but I was like, okay, well, let me, look into this book. And I went home and I shared it with my wife, and I was like, you are typically the financial person in our relationship. So you read, I read the first chapter, seems like you, and we made like a bunch of different kind of decisions. And this was just from a networking conversation where I had never heard, about this before. And, just gave me the book is called Rich Dad Poor Dad. I couldn't remember. Rich Dad Poor Dad is the name of the book.
Ah, yes. Yeah. Yeah. A classic.
That shift. And I was like, what is this book? And
yeah. 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 Well, and good on your wife to be like, okay, yeah, I'll read it, and not be,
she loved it. It was her jam.
Very cool. Okay. I agree. I think even just like our most recent monthly luncheon, we had, Kristen Staggs, like former WNBA trainer and now motivational speaker. And, you apply it to business, but she also gave us some great, informative and inspiring tips and tricks for just our personal wellness. And, you have to take care of yourself at the same time. And it was a great, like, kick in the butt for what, we all needed kind of coming out of the summer, and you've let yourself travel and eat and do whatever you want to do. And it was like, okay, no, I got to get it together. Yeah. So the fact that NAWBO, and Mindy East is our, programming director, as you know, and is doing a phenomenal job putting together events that do have that like very potent combination of inspiring and insightful, and you're going to walk away with something and actionable and all of that as well. So I always love, what she comes up with for her ideas. Mm-hmm. What would you say to somebody who, especially with your lens of DEIB, if somebody's considering coming to a NAWBO event, and, we all do it where we kind of go scope it out a little bit on like their, social media or their website. If someone's scrolling and they're like, I just don't know if like that's where I belong. I don't know if that's my, people. What do you say to them if they're nervous about trying out NAWBO?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me, it goes back to that piece around where I talked about like how imposter syndrome can come up for me sometimes, and that discomfort that I feel. And I really felt it the first time that I went to a NAWBO event, and I felt like I don't belong here, and I'm not sure that this is for me. But it was my own insecurities. It was before I'd even met folks. I'd made all these assumptions about myself and fit before I even gave myself the space to really learn and understand. And this was said to me in the orientation. Katasha, who's now over membership, said this during my orientation, and she said, you get what you give in NAWBO, and the more that you're involved, what you get involved with is really going to influence your experience. And that's so true for me. I think about our board retreat and just getting the chance to know, the other women on the board, and, the businesses and the life of NAWBO members has really been powerful for me to just be able to create human connection of getting to know people while also getting to understand the business world more. So if anyone's looking at it and scrolling, one thing I'd say is feel free to find me on LinkedIn, and I'd love to go with you. We can go together so it doesn't feel like you're by yourself. And I'm sure that if there's anyone that on NAWBO, reach out to them and say, are you going to this? Can I go with you? Because we can bring guests. And for me, one of the biggest things to make me feel more comfortable is when someone says, come with me, and don't do it alone. And that's the whole point of NAWBO, is to create community, to create connection, so that we all know that we're not alone in women business ownership, that there is a not only San Antonio community, not only Texas community, but a national community of folks.
Yeah. I think a lot of times too, life is all about timing. And I think it's also kind of recognizing in yourself, are there past experiences where you've had negative, situations that maybe you're kind of walking into these new opportunities feeling already kind of guarded and jaded. Okay. And it's almost, can you find it, within yourself to walk into that room feeling really open and excited? Because I think what I hear a lot from other women too that are trying out NAWBO, or new members, or excited about what they've been able to find, is when they walked in, they were in a place where they were ready for that type of like connection and open to it and excited about it. And it's amazing to me sometimes how just having that attitude walking in the room, you kind of receive back this energy that you've brought, if that makes sense.
It does. That's such a good point. Yeah, that mindset piece that's in there too. And that mindset can even come with, if there's like insecurity or uncertainty, that can still be there. It can be with you, and still having the mindset, and I want this. I'm ready for this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And 100%, I agree with you. I mean, we've got, our hospitality committee, and their entire job is to make sure if we've got somebody who's new to an event and they walk in that room, they should not be just standing there awkwardly. And our board knows that that's also our responsibility to seek those people out. And I hardly ever, at monthly meetings, actually stop and talk to people just for my own, enjoyment. It's like, I'm constantly buzzing around the room and like, who do I need to grab? What do I need to do? Like, it's, that's part of the sacrifice we make as board members, that, NAWBO events are no longer just about us. It's really about like making sure the entire experience is great for everybody who's attending. But yeah, definitely, I hope people watching would understand that, we have those systems in place to make sure you feel welcomed. We're all very, very open to helping, make sure you have a friend to, hold your hand and a friendly face to see when you walk in. And it really does kind of give you what you put into it as well. All right. So if people are curious about learning more about your business, if they've been thinking about doing more of this type of work for their business and transforming, how they, operate or with their people and culture, how can they find more about you? And do you have anything exciting coming up that you want to share with us?
Awesome. Yeah. So I'm on social media. You can find me, Dr. Brandi Scott, on LinkedIn or at Brandi Scott Ph.D. on Instagram are great ways to connect. And if you're interested and want to learn more, we can always schedule a consultation to discuss what your goals are. And I love that. And then you decide, right, if it's something that you want to pursue or if it's not at this time. And what I'm looking forward to is I continue to look forward to the coaching that I have, the one-on-one coaching. I've got some great clients who, some folks who are starting a business and, the uncertainty of the whole process, right? When you're moving into that industry. And I have some clients that just helping them with getting started on their business, or folks who are negotiating a salary for maybe the first time they ever negotiated, or maybe it wasn't successful in the past, and helping them build the skills and the confidence when they get an offer to negotiate that offer and ask for the salary and schedule that meets their life needs. So I always love those.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. Well, thank you so much, Brandi, for joining us. It was wonderful to learn more about you. And if you are curious about NAWBO, we do have our monthly meeting coming up next week, actually, on Thursday. That would be August 28th, I believe, if I'm doing my math. No, 29th. Oh, no, 28th. Yes. 28th, if you want to join us. So if you're tuning in before then, please go and register quickly. Sometimes we do sell out on those luncheons, so we want you there. But there is that QR code above if you are listening in, or if you're watching today. There's a QR code to go to our website and find out all of our upcoming events. Or if you're tuning into the podcast, which if you have not yet, go subscribe to Texas Women Mean Business on Apple, Spotify, all the things. This is now a podcast as well, so we are excited about that piece. But if you're tuning into the podcast, we will put our URL to the events calendar in the show notes. So thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time.